Margaret coming?
I know she went to dinner with Shirley, Veronica, and one other person last night. I was worried with Shirley being the most conservative in the group that I was going to bail her out.
Just don't talk politics.
No, they didn't. Just fun.
Slide up your yard sign.
I did show a sign. And I did one for Candace Miller. They stole it. I used to steal Candace Miller's son. She's the least offensive.
Right there, right.
People probably don't even know No.
Republican.
Just, yeah, I mean, a lot of people would know that.
What if you did your homework?
A lot of people don't do their homework. Jim joined us?
Yes.
So she's looking the reason why we start late?
Yes.
That's fine.
Sure.
I'm already,
Yeah, no.
not infringing on anyone. And no hungry.
Thank you. There's no bad questions here.
So is the appropriate for me tonight, though, in regards to the minutes, just to state, since that was not on the board, I've missed it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. I thought that, but I just wanted to make sure. I read them, but that doesn't mean that I should be saying approving them.
I just went through this. I'd like to call to order the East Point Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, November 7th at 7:01 PM. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Roll,
Present.
Mr. Stokes,
Here.
Ms. Julinski here, Mr. Sasek,
Here.
Chairman DeHunt.
Here. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
Motion.
Support.
We have motion and support. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Roll,
Yes.
Mr. Sasek,
Yes.
Mr. Stokes,
Yes.
Ms. Julinski, yes. Chairman DeHunt.
Yes. Moving on to the first hearing of the public. At this time, you have 3 minutes to be heard. If you are here to comment or talk about the items in the public hearing, we ask that you refrain from that and stay to the public hearing time. Otherwise, you have 3 minutes to say whatever you want to say. Does anybody wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we will close the first hearing of the public and we will move on to item 4. Yes, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to request that we table the approval of the minutes. We found some issues that we did not have time to correct.
Okay. Can I get a motion to table approval of the minutes for October 3rd, 2024 to the December meeting?
Make that motion.
We have motion. Do we have support?
I'll support.
We have motion and support. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Roll,
Yes.
Mr. Stokes.
Yes.
Mr. Sasek,
Yes.
Ms. Julinski, yes. And Chairman DeHunt.
Yes. Moving on to the first hearing of the public. Can I get a motion to open that, please? To receive comments on special land use request for Event Hall 24935 Gratiot Avenue.
So moved.
We have motion. Do we have support?
Support.
We have motion and support. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Sasek,
Yes.
Ms. Julinski, yes. Mr. Roll,
Yes.
Mr. Stokes.
Yes.
Chairman DeHunt.
Yes. Okay. Does anybody wish to be heard with respect to the Event Hall proposal? If you do, the podium is yours. You have 3 minutes to speak.
So this evening we are considering a special land use request for 24935 Gratiot. and the applicant is here this evening, Rob Davis. He did previously receive a special land use approval for the event hall business, the Point Events, that was approved at 24850 Gratiot. However, due to a number of reasons with that specific building and the parking arrangements, he is now looking to relocate his event business to 24935, which is a nice size space. It's about 2,250 square feet, 24850, to basically across the street on Gratiot, which has more ample parking and a better layout and flow for his business type. And in preparing for this review, I did receive a summary from city administration and building department with some other issues or like code enforcement related items with the other business locations, which have been, some of which have been addressed. But I do think it's relevant just to talk about with the applicant his plan for maintaining and overseeing the businesses. Again, with a special land use, there are certain considerations because special land use are designated when they have a more intensive use and have the likelihood of greater impact on surrounding properties. Before we go through the special land use review criteria, I also just wanted to clarify one point that at the former location, 24850, the applicant was working with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and the Michigan Municipal League through a RRC redevelopment service support, and he received a grant to work on renderings and explore the idea of adding a commercial community kitchen. Now that was related to the other location. That is not related to this new location at the time being. So those renderings were prepared for a different site. One thing I guess to point out for the Planning Commission to consider is the proposed business hours, again, pretty standard for an event hall, 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. However, I know that's been a point of discussion related to event halls in the past, because again, there is a noise consideration to be made, especially on adjacent properties. This new business is located in an MU1 district, but it is in a more regional commercial area. So there is a little bit less of concern because the property does not abut residential directly. It actually abuts a municipal parking lot. However, there are still residential properties in close vicinity. So that's one point to consider in the special land use request and to decide if further discussion and conditions should be made. We don't anticipate parking issues so long as the events are within a reasonable size based on the building, which brings us to the point of the fact that on the application, it's proposed that the events be up to 120 people. However, there is not a fire suppression system. And so based on the International Fire Code, which I referenced in the review, there must be a automatic sprinkler system for occupancy loads over 100 people. So I did speak with the applicant today, and there are not plans to install, again, this is just the tenant, not the property owner. So there are no plans to install overhead fire suppression system. And so I would recommend that at this point in time, there is a capacity at this time.
Team?
Can you clarify, you said that the east end of the building, which if I know that building is a one-story portion, whereas the back portion or the west side is a two-story, or it's at least a lot taller. Can you kind of clarify? I think you said that the applicant is seeking to operate out of the east end and storage in the west end? Is that?
Yes.
Is the applicant running the whole building?
Yes, so I also clarified that with the applicant today. He is indeed renting the entire building, but the event, the area in which patrons or guests of the events will be in the east portion of the building closest to the frontage along Gratiot, and then the other parts of the building will be used for storage at this time.
And kind of a follow-up question. I know there were handwritten floor plans, I believe.
Yes,
Is the smaller portion which is to be used for, the parties and the business purpose of, entertaining people gather, is the east side then is laid out that way, where is the back half actually more of like a concrete floor with more of it's tall, I don't know, if trucks park in there, is it?
yeah, that's a valid question, and
Up. So, but it is a beautiful building. I believe we had questions down here.
Mr. Chairman, would now be an appropriate time for me to question some parking situation?
Absolutely.
When I was looking at the plans and then reading the packet, my concern is the fact that the building itself only has like 10 parking spaces with 1 or 2 barrier-free spaces. The intent being that they're planning on having overflow into the municipal lot. So over the weekend, I had an opportunity to go look at the backside of the building and just scope out the parking. But my bigger concern came when I looked at the municipal lot. It's really in extremely bad disrepair, and this might be a question now. Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Is there something that can be done to get that part? Maybe this is from Ms. Holman. Maybe squeeze out some money out of the budget, please. I'm looking at the application here, and I'm seeing are you living on 9 Mile? Because I see your address for the application is on 9 Mile.
That's my business office.
Oh, okay, all right. So I guess a follow-up maybe for me to the other businesses, are you merging these other locations into this one facility?
That is the future intent, absolutely.
Okay, actually, if you wouldn't mind taking the podium, please? So the future intent is to merge everything into the one facility?
Yes, first and foremost, like you said, the building is like the most beautiful building ever. It's been maintained immaculately, and it has such ample space for future growth. So I'm just taking it one step at a time, and then I will be able to eventually consolidate all businesses up under one roof.
Okay.
Another concern then is he right now has 3 businesses within the city, 3 event halls, I believe. And so if you're going to merge everything into one, are we going to wind up with 3 empty buildings?
Something to think about. Do you own these properties, sir? if you don't mind?
I do not own.
Okay.
I've been leasing for almost 6 years.
Not that this is germane to what we're here to discuss tonight, but, we have to think about the future, and we have to be cognizant of what's going on, so.
Well, in regards to that, humbly speaking, my record kind of speaks for itself that I've been blessed to be still in business this long, considering the circumstances of how everything is going. So I'm extremely thankful for that. I feel like this location is getting ready to open up more extremely positive opportunities, whether it's with the MEDC, whether it's other opportunities in the community. It's getting ready to open up so many more opportunities. Things go according to my plan. I may not need to let those buildings go because I've survived off of those buildings. I've survived off of those building structures. There's a couple surrounding things that have taken place that have kind of hindered my business, but that's neither here nor there. I've still been in a lucrative position and thankful for that.
So, forward visioning here, what is your long-term, so let's say that things continue to go well. Are you looking to expand into these back storage areas on this property?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a more opportune direction in regards to party rental. So that's something that I'm newly exploring. And that's not more mass populace. It's more of a display, more of providing my other locations with said rental equipment that they currently get from other businesses. If I'm in a position for things to fall in place, I may actually go that route because I now have the ample space to do that. So now I can have pretty much a one-stop shop in regards to when events come in, and then they bring in event coordinators that do all their decorations and things for them. So if I'm able to have that in-house, that's more productive for my business.
So you would rent tables and all that?
That's correct.
From your storage area?
Yes.
Question, so what do your other businesses do currently?
All three of my businesses are event spaces. I have The Point, which is on Kelly Road, 22225 Kelly Road. And then I have The Point 2, which is directly across the street. And these are smaller venues. These are smaller, intimate setting event spaces. And I've been operating, again, over the last 5 years.
Okay, and then this is just going to be a community kitchen, or it's also going to be an event hall?
Yes, ma'am, it's going to be an event hall. This is my bigger location. Everything is based off of capacity. My Kelly location has a 45, 50-person capacity. A location across the street, 65. And this one here, 99. So everything is being able to accommodate. Not everyone has big events. Not everyone wants anyone in their house, whether it's 2 people or 20 people. So I'm able to accommodate every aspect of that thus far.
Okay, and then you said your record speaks for itself, yet there were violations found in your other event spaces.
I didn't say it was perfect.
Nothing is perfect, right?
I didn't say it was perfect.
How are you going to control the violations from happening again? Or do you clear them up right away? What is?
May I ask the violations that we're referring to? Because one violation that seems to stand out is a bus that's in the back of the building that I was approved to have. That's not a public nuisance because it's been allowed.
Ms. Smith?
Yes, so the bus, I'm not sure if at one point it was allowed, but we do not allow for the storage of inoperable vehicles. And I do, from the report that I have, code enforcement deemed it inoperable.
It is definitely inoperable, intentionally inoperable, and it was considered a part of the building. I have documentation of that. I posted it on the bus because of the inspection that took place. But it was really created for shelter, for smoking area, instead of having a group of people hanging out in front of the bus, obstructing the sidewalk area because they want to smoke, obstructing the other business passageways. So basically, I created a shelter for people to smoke. That was the intent.
Well, I can work with we can work with the applicant and code enforcement on that issue, because I'm not aware of it being approved. I just know that there's been issues.
It's posted on the bus.
Well, I mean, the other facilities are not germane necessarily to this particular facility, but we need to know these things
Absolutely, understand.
because we want to know that you're going to do right by the area.
But if I may, in regards to violations, is that the gist of the violations? Because that's a bus, that's not a patron issue. I haven't had any major infractions with.
Ms. Smith, do you want to go through the memorandum a little bit?
Sure. So the report that I have, we just talked about the first, 22225 Kelly. The other location, 23051.
Yes,
Gratiot.
complete cooperation with the gentleman.
There were code enforcement issues around trash, and there were also liquor bottles in the parking area in the rear on the property. 189409 Mile. These have been closed out but there was, work without permits on the interior. Then there was, the use of a tent with a grill outside, and then other pop-up vendors outside without the appropriate permits. But that, again, was addressed. It has not been a reoccurring violation.
Nor do I no longer have 18940.
Okay,
I'm no longer affiliated with that building whatsoever.
okay. And then the last is, during this time period of a temporary certificate of occupancy. So as you know, our ordinance allows when an applicant is going through the special land use review process, they're eligible to be considered for what we call a temporary certificate of occupancy, for usage of up to 90 days while they go through this process. And we did have, reports around, again, the accumulation of liquor bottles on the property. I don't know if there was actually a code violation issued on that, but we did receive reports around that, which I do believe brings up a good point. That has been a key point of our review process with other event halls, and with, again, other event halls, we've had issues of illegal use or serving of alcohol without a liquor license. So we did include that as well as a recommended condition of approval for the special land use to avoid any, future, or like to prevent any misuse of the business facility without appropriate liquor license, without a special event liquor license or a more permanent liquor license. So based on the city's policy and the state policy, alcohol cannot be served unless there is a license affiliated with the business and the property.
What happens if liquor is used in a situation like that? Would the applicant stand to lose his business license?
So that, well, yes, it becomes, I guess, a point of enforcement. And so we, as you may or may not remember, have already had a special land use approved event hall that had reoccurring offenses in which alcohol was served at the facility without an appropriate liquor license. And upon a number of offense, at that point, the business license was then revoked, and then the special land use was revoked.
Mr. Davis, are you going to be allowing liquor at your facility?
So,
Yeah, I guess before I let you answer, I appreciate you actually, when I look at these other things, going back and handling whatever needed to be done. So I do want that on the record, that you did address the situations that you had at your prior facilities. So, but please, if you can go on about the liquor.
so it's kind of twofold. First and foremost, 2 years ago, you guys directly addressed the alcohol situation and made it very clear that when you go to, I can't recall exactly whom it was on the board, but when you go to a function, as long as there's a licensed bartender representing the establishment, alcohol is going to be served at banquet halls and event gatherings. This is new for this to be brought to me, but it also clarifies why there's an abundance of bottles being found in the parking lots, because I do regulate to the fullest. If there's not a license allowed at a banquet event of people gathering for memorials, birthday parties, whatever the situation may be, that's the purpose of them renting an event space, so that they can have the opportunity to do what they want to do, within reason, of course. So this creates a huge barrier. Huge barrier. I can't control what people do in their car, but when they come into the facility up under certain regulated guidelines, they should be able to have the amenities for their function to be their function. Whether it's a wedding, a baby shower, a memorial, whatever it is.
Before we go to you, Ms. Smith, Mr. Myers, can you make a note about the funeral home?
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Smith?
Yeah, so I do want to clarify that the point is that the proper licensing has to be present or active or approved if there's liquor served. So there are cases in which one can rent from a caterer if they have a catering permit. It's usually a part of a Class C or an SDM permit, but there are variations in which a caterer is licensed and then they can serve legally at an event hall. But that is the parameters. There does have to be proper licensing if alcohol is served. So it is within those parameters.
So there is a path to allowing this?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Ms. Smith, do you have anything else for us?
I don't believe so, but I do think something that came out of this conversation is that the business would be relying on a municipal lot. And again, it would not be on the business's property, but we want every business, especially a special land use, to be an improvement to the community. So I would anticipate a need for the business to help maintain the parking lot, especially if it's a key asset to support their business. So if there is trash that accumulates after an event, that is also part of the business activity and should be addressed as well. Like the site and the parking area should be properly maintained. Again, within reason, right? Like if it's because of the event, then yes, if there's any trash left behind, then that should be taken care of by the business.
I absolutely, totally agree.
But I also think the city needs to be a good partner as well and make sure that parking lot is improved.
And maintained, because there have been some weed issues in the past.
Yes.
So, Ms. Smith, on your site plan considerations, item number 3 under the motion. You write applicant to provide parking space and maneuver lane dimensions on the site plan and restripe the parking lot. I mean, I'm just stating, I think the obvious, but that is for that
Yes.
parking lot that they own or
On the
that he's
property,
leasing. It has nothing to do with the municipal lot.
correct.
Okay.
And is there proper maneuverability for fire trucks?
Yes, there is. Do you want to talk about the site plan now or wait till we?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I always do that.
It's fine.
I did have another question for the applicant. I saw in the paperwork that, I think I saw in 2 different spots, 2 different times of business of operation, the time of the operation of the business. I saw one from 9 AM to 2 AM. And I believe I saw in a different spot that the business time end of the day would be 1 AM. Can you clarify that?
So, pardon me. Usually through Sunday through Thursday, max would be 1 AM for cleaning and out. Weekends are extensive, a little bit longer. And that's what should have been clarified. I do apologize for that.
If it was, I missed it?
Yes.
Maybe it was. So when you say that it's open till 1, what time are the patrons, what time do they rent the spot until on the
12.
weekday? Until 12?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Excuse me.
So you're giving yourself an hour to clean up,
Absolutely.
okay?
And then on the weekends, it would be till 1? They have-
Patrons, yes. Mhm.
They have patrons, yes. And are you looking at, on your paperwork, let me find it real quick here so I can answer the question correctly.
Can I go back to that time frame? So again, 2 years ago, you guys equated the event space to the nightclubs that you've allowed. And I can't really see where there would be a difference outside of the fact that I'm not sure why the event space should have to have earlier hours and not have the same hours, because those establishments get to stay open until 2 a.m. Correct?
I mean, I'm just asking you, this is information I found on your paperwork.
Yes,
Please.
absolutely, and that again is because when you're kind of guided to answer questions a certain way, I have to comply to that. But I'm asking in regards to, this is a new year, so I'm asking for clarification.
I would defer to Ms. Smith.
Would it be the fact that there have been so many changes with the ordinances and the zoning and all this that, is that?
Yeah, that's part of it, but we do classify the uses differently for a number of reasons. One of them is the number of people at a given time. So with this business, it would be allowed to have up to 100 people. We're not gonna restrict, the number of people that can be there after a certain hour. And our noise ordinance is 11 PM, I believe. So we do, when we allow for land uses, we do, especially a special land use, we do have to be mindful of the other ordinances and impacts that would have on the surrounding properties. And so the nature is different in terms of the quantity of people, right? Like an event is anticipated that you're gonna have more people at one time. Restaurants or bars usually have a trickle of people. So the intensity it's different. They're different land uses.
Does that answer the question?
As long as we're going to make sure we're being consistent about everything, because I'm sure we all know that there's exceptions that have exceeded all of those things that you just stated. But I understand, absolutely.
I will say, with other event halls that have come before the planning commission, we've spoken extensively about the hours of operation, and in a number of cases have limited it to midnight, I believe. So, again, that was also based on the record and past issues with the operator of the business, and it was to avoid, and it was also abutting residential, so it was to avoid points of conflict and to prevent nuisances from occurring. Again, I do believe the context of this site is different.
Extremely different, and I can't stress that enough. I mean, I've been allowed to be in this business as long as I have been because of certain things that have taken place. But this location right here, it has everything that it's supposed to have. I mean, this barrier is where any type of residential starts, and that's every bit of 100 yards. That's on the other side of the municipal parking lot, which is on the other side of an alley, before any noise gets out of a cinder block building that's operating in the front portion of the building. That's a 7,000 square foot building. I've made a huge sacrifice and went above and beyond to find and be blessed to have the right building for the business that I do. To take everything into consideration of the neighbors that I've dealt with for 2 years, and I swear I wish Dr. Dike could have made it this evening. He is the prime witness of what I've experienced over the last 2 years of taking into consideration and losing my butt off, taking care of my residents and my neighboring businesses. I've sacrificed a lot because I care about that tremendously. Tremendously.
I don't think that we're questioning that, sir. In fact, I know the area well, and I think that what you're proposing, this is the perfect location. Now, in my perfect world, I would have loved to have seen a brew pub there, but that's never going to happen. But I think for your purposes, this is an ideal situation. You have a beautiful event space. You have the potential to use the back of the building for whatever, catering, rental, equipment, things like that. So there is a great, this is a good building for what you're proposing to do in future growth. We're not trying to be difficult and put you through the gauntlet, but we got burned on a couple of event spaces.
Trust me, I'm aware.
And it, we are very cautious. I was driving down 9 Mile, not your space, last week, and there was an event space, and they were parked in the alleyway.
No.
And there have been issues there, and so I'm scared, and I worry about these things, and please don't take it personally. We're not trying to skewer you. We want everything to be upfront. But again, I think this is a beautiful location for what you're attempting to do and what you probably will be successful at doing. So,
Well, and also I would say that having this conversation, reinforces what our regulations are. So going back to, I read music till midnight. So, we have a noise ordinance that runs until 11 o'clock. So if you're cognizant of that noise ordinance, then you can operate within the parameters of the ordinance. So part of this is a conversation, so you understand we have ordinances that they are enforcing, and we obviously are trying to make the right decision for our city, and we want you to have a good outcome as well. So it goes both ways.
Absolutely.
And my question to you about the hours was based on your application.
Understood.
I didn't even ask you about music.
Yes, sir.
But since that just came up, I'm glad that there was an issue brought up about the time of the music ordinance. So, or the noise ordinance. So,
Now-
conversation.
just to touch on the noise ordinance, is that for everything, or is that specific to residents? Is it specific to,
It's outside noise, exterior noises, yeah, commercial, residential.
so interior noise, you're fine?
Correct,
So he can have a band and
Yeah.
his patrons can be dancing and enjoying their time?
yeah,
But
within
if they're-
reason. Yeah, as
Okay.
long as like the doors are not wide open and now,
And no speakers on the outside or anything like that? Okay,
Mr. Chair, if I may,
yes.
as it relates to the parking lot, I just want to clarify that the city owns the 2/3 to the east. That last 1/3 of the parking lot is actually owned by Olive Garden. So
Then 2/3 of that parking lot needs to be cleaned up quick.
what about the other third?
Well, I'll let you handle Olive Garden, Mrs. Assistant City Manager.
Well, hold on a second. Can you state that again?
Yes. So the city owns, and if you actually go out there, you can see the delineation physically, but we own the 2/3 behind the building and in the middle, and then you can see there is delineation, and that other parcel is owned by Olive Garden. Yeah, that's ours right there.
That's yours, and the back portion is
It's
out.
Olive Garden, just to
Okay.
clarify.
Okay,
Interesting,
yeah, and thanks for bringing that up.
especially with as much parking as out here.
Wow.
Go on.
Chair, I will say, I did not mean to overlook the point that I do think this is an improvement upon your past special land use application and an improvement to the, based on the other building that you were operating out of. I also want to clarify that because you come before us today and say that only the front half is going to be used for event space and the other is going to be used for storage, if you want to grow or you want to work with the property owner to expand upon the interior, as long as it's within 100 guests or people, guests and employees, like, you can grow within that building, right? There's room to have a larger event space, again, with some modifications to the layout. So it does allow for you to have some unique opportunities with this space.
Are you suggesting that as long as the occupants is under 100 because of not having a sprinkler, that he could expand the floor space?
Yes,
Does that change the parking requirement? I'm not sure. There's
No.
probably plenty of parking. I'm not sure.
no, because, no, it would not.
Because why?
Because
I
of the
thought parking was,
municipal, sorry, because of the municipal lot and
What-
the number of spaces available. Because we're reviewing this with the understanding that this is approved up to 100 people. Our parking regulations are based on the capacity of the building. So unless a fire suppression system is added and then the number of people can increase, the proposal for the event space up to 100 people remains the same, and therefore the parking evaluation remains the same. Now, if he would like to work with the property owner or something happens in the future in which they're able to have a fire suppression system to support more than 100, at that point, the parking would be in question. That's why the condition of the special land use is contingent upon the sprinkler system. So if we are concerned about future growth or increase in number, we could address that, but I don't believe, again, it would be different if you were the property owner, and we could explore that as a future option.
it wasn't really a concern for the applicant as much as for some reason, I had thought that the parking spot was a calculation based on usable floor space for patrons, not based on the occupants. But you're clarifying, it's based on the occupants, not the floor space or usable floor space. Okay. And then I had one more question for the applicant. Much like the liquor issue, are you handling, on your application, there was a question about food prepared / served, your answer was no. Is that handled, are you handling that in the same way that you would handle any liquor concern? So if the applicant wants food, then they would bring it in? I mean, you're saying that it's not served and it's not prepared there, so can you clarify that?
Absolutely. So there's no cooking appliances there. There's no way to cook on site. Only a warmer that holds already prepared food, up to 8 trays, standard cooking trays. That's it. So there's no way to cook food or anything of that nature. You can only have your caterer bring in the food. We can keep it warm. We can display however you want your setup to be accordingly, and keep warm your excessive food and serve as needed.
Is it, on the count of employees, I think on your application as well, I think you said it was 2.
Mm-hmm.
So that's you and someone else, or I guess it doesn't matter who it is, but there's just 2.
Yes.
Does that include outside, like caterers and
They're not my employees.
but they go into the, and you're right, 100%, so but they would go into the count of the building limit, I guess that's my point.
Yeah, basically everybody that comes in is about a part of capacity. Absolutely.
Okay.
That's understood.
Okay.
But, I mean, is there, yeah, I'm gonna have to have a clicker at the door, and I'm not trying to be facetious or anything like that, but there's no way for me to know exactly when we get to 100 people, unless I count every individual person that comes in there. Most functions know a window. This young lady, she had a baby shower. She thought she was only going to have, I think it was like 45, 50 people. 75 people showed up. I don't know exactly how I can control that or be responsible for that. If they're bringing gifts and they're showing their, I know what my limitations are based off of what that's how come I have the locations that I have. This is what I can accommodate. This is what I state in my upfront contracts. I do everything that I'm supposed to do to properly clarify that. Don't think that you can bring 200 people over here because I can't have that capacity. Very clear.
So you would,
I would say though that you're right, you can't control everything, but I would tell you your business license is based on an occupancy, the occupancy is part of that. And that management is up to you. So I am going to push back a little bit and say you can't control it. You have to control it. You're responsible and you are applying for something. And part of that is saying, I understand I can't have more than 100 people. So it is incumbent on you to, react to that. And I'm not suggesting you have a clicker, that's not what I'm saying, but to say that I can't control it, you gotta control it.
I mean, everything within my power to the fullest, absolutely. And that's what I mean by having a contract that completely states that.
So your contract will state that the party capacity would be, if there's two of you on staff and they have 3 or 4 people, then they will know that the maximum capacity of that building will not exceed 100 people.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Please.
Mr. Chair, if I could just address, I'm sure the applicant will take the appropriate enforcement steps, but being that that is a public lot, consumption of alcoholic beverages would not be permitted. I know, and I'm not going to go and name other event halls over in the past, but the city has received complaints of event halls in the past where the patrons utilize the side streets of the parking lot for consumption of alcoholic beverages or the smoking of marijuana. And we've received complaints from the surrounding neighborhoods that the residents, especially in the summertime, cannot have their windows open in the evening because of the overwhelming smell of marijuana. The city does have a smoke ordinance that addresses something like that. So if that were permitted on the premises in any way, it could result in a violation of the city ordinance, either the consumption of alcohol in public or the use of or smoking of marijuana in public, both of which would be violations of the ordinance. But I just wanted the record to reflect that.
Okay.
And if I may ask, that would be a ticket for that individual, correct? Because they're in violation of that ordinance. That would just be like somebody pulling up into the parking lot right now and smoking or drinking in that parking lot. Would I be liable for that?
You're talking about the municipal lot, correct?
Correct, right now.
Yeah, so no, you personally wouldn't be responsible for the municipal lot.
But they should be cited, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay. I dealt with this across the street at 24850. Deb is my friend. I said, Deb, we're not going to hesitate. We're going to call the police if they're not complying to the directives that we give them. I have no choice but to do that. That's the only way that I can regulate the situation, because we know throughout the city, people are going to do what they want to do. So we can only do so much. So yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Does anybody have anything else for the applicant? Ms. Smith, do you have anything else?
No, not in terms of the special land use.
Okay. So let's move on.
I guess
Mr.
I
Chair,
will-
there is a motion that's attached to the agenda.
Mr. Albright, since you read motions so well, would you like to read it?
I don't have it presently up, but
I could read it for you.
Brigitte may,
Yeah,
I'm sure she has it readily available.
yeah, I can read.
Thank you.
Read the proposed motion. Motion to recommend conditional approval of the proposed special land use for an event space at 24935 Gratiot, parcel ID 02-1430-226-041, based on the findings of fact in the planner review letter dated October 30th, with the following conditions. The first, an automatic sprinkler system is installed or the occupancy per event is lowered to 100 people, guests and employees, or less. 2, alcohol shall not be served on the premises unless there is an appropriate liquor license or one obtained.
Anybody have anything further? Do we need to establish the hours of operation, or are we good with the way it is? We're good? Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody wish to make that motion that Ms. Smith so eloquently read?
I'll make the motion.
We have motion, do we have support? Support. We have motion and support. Yeah. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Sasek,
Yes.
Chairman DeHunt,
Yes.
Mr. Broll,
Yes.
Mr. Stokes,
Yes.
Ms. Julinski, yes.
Okay, Ms. Smith, item B.
All right, so this is to consider the site plan approval, which is a required component of the special land use review process. So this is the site plan approval of the existing site. And as we have already discussed, the building footprint is not going to change. It is an existing parking lot. However, there are a number of updates that need to be made to bring the site into compliance within reason. So we did conduct a preliminary site plan review based on the sketch plan that we received and it was a sketch plan drawn to scale that was on file with the property. So I do propose in my review that we work with the applicant to conduct an updated site plan and include the number of items that would need to be updated. For example, one of the things that would need to be included is a photometric plan would need to be conducted to make sure that the existing lighting or any additional exterior lighting is within compliance of the ordinance. We need to make sure that the parking dimensions are correct. So those measurements would need to be provided on the site plan, and then we would work with them to make sure there's the appropriate dimensions for the ADA barrier-free spacing, and that they are slanted correctly based on the flow of traffic. If we need any additional traffic markings on the site, again, just safety and life safety issues. And then there is not a loading area designated on the site, although it does abut the alleyway. So I would be interested to hear from the applicant if you anticipate a need for a loading and unloading area or how that would work on the site. Otherwise, we would need information about the dumpster enclosure and then the additional landscaping such as the 2 street trees and 12 shrubs required along Gratiot.
Is this something that you think we need to table?
We could certainly table it because, again, we're working off of a sketch plan, and so there are 2 options. You could either recommend that this be handled administratively, and then we would have to go through and work with the applicant to make sure that all of these issues of compliance would be accounted for. However, the alternative is that we work with the client, he brings back a site plan, and then we just make sure that everything is accurately included, or if the applicant needs a waiver or any additional considerations at that point, we could address it then. Because again, we're operating off of the existing condition of the site, and we do not have an updated site plan at this time.
Mr. Myers, do you have any input on this?
At the list of what she has prepared as followed up as a new document, I don't see these being troublesome enough that we can't handle it administratively and give a confirmation document.
Okay. Mr. Davis, do you have any input as regards to some of the items that Ms. Smith has put forward?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't anticipate any issues moving forward. Now, if the applicant did need a waiver moving forward, then we would have to come back to the planning commission. Otherwise, the site just needs to be brought into compliance.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes perfect sense, administrative
Okay.
review, and if there's anything that needs to come back in front of us, then that would be good. I just have a question. I have not been in the building. The applicant, maybe you can just tell me, where's it, how do patrons access the building? Is there a side entrance or front?
So,
Okay, so there's, I'm more than happy to give a tour. Because it's perfect. You just walk right in, there's 2-door entryway, handicap accessible, there's a handicap ramp up to the main doors, both sides. So the parking is already ADA approved, it just needs to be restriped. Entryway is there, entry, exit. As soon as you come in through 8-foot doors, 84-inch doors. There's an open floor plan there. Everything is just immaculate. Everything's in place. I didn't have to do anything but paint.
With a beautiful ornate floor design.
Yes, absolutely.
It was a beautiful building. When it was the smokehouse, I know the people that bought it.
Yes.
And just the smokehouse, thank God they closed because you would never buy meat from there if you knew what I heard that they had to do to make that building into compliance. But it's a beautiful building. It's probably one of the best interior buildings we have in the city, in my opinion.
The front section.
Oh, God, yeah. I never saw the back. Probably don't want to see it, but,
So the entryway is on the south side of the building then, which
Yes.
is the
That's-
parking lot
yes.
side?
That's correct. That's correct.
does anybody wish to make a motion on this one? Oh, Ms. Smith, why don't
I
you?
have prepared one and it is long, so
All right.
I can volunteer myself.
Volunteer or sacrifice?
Yeah. All right, motion to recommend conditional approval of the proposed site plan for an event space at 24935 Gratiot, parcel ID 02-1430-226-041, provided that a revised site plan is presented to the city planner to address the comments during the planning commission meeting and the required and recommended conditions outlined in the planner's review dated October 30th, 2024, and comments brought forth by the city engineer once the updated site plan is submitted. Listed below is the information needed for the site plan, conditional approval, and waivers. The first being that the applicant must provide details on paint color if they plan to paint the brick. Second, applicant must submit a photometric plan to ensure compliance. Third, applicant must provide parking space and maneuvering lane dimensions on the site plan and restripe the parking lot. Fourth, applicant must provide a loading space on site or clarify why one is not needed. 5, applicant must provide dumpster enclosure details. 6, applicant must provide requested landscaping information as noted on the site plan. 7, applicant must provide the 2 street trees and 12 shrubs required along Gratiot. And additionally, we grant the following waiver, which would be to waive the landscape architect seal requirement because this is a reoccupancy, not a new construction, and there is minimal space or need for landscaping.
Does anybody wish to make that motion?
I'll make the motion as stated.
I will,
Go ahead.
I'll support it.
We have motion and support. Motion by Mr. Stokes, support by the triumvirate over here. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Stokes?
Yes.
Mr. Broll?
Yes.
Mr. Sasek?
Yes.
Ms. Julinski, yes. Chairman DeHunt?
Yes. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady.
Looking forward to this.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right, we have no unfinished business. Moving on to training at a propitious hour of 8 o'clock. Mr. Myers, you're on deck.
If you don't mind, Chair, that we will address the proposed calendar for 2025.
Okay?
This includes not only the meeting dates, which would be the first Thursday of the month. I don't believe we have an exception next year. It would be, yep, the first Thursday of every month. And then the application submission deadline and the notice due date are listed.
I do believe that Commissioner Sasek pointed out something. I
Okay.
guess.
January 1st.
Yeah, are we
Yeah,
opening
so-
City Hall on New Year's Day?
2026.
Of January 1st, 2026?
Or is it January 7th?
January 7th would make more sense.
Okay,
I was gonna say, where's your commitment, guys?
yeah,
Come on.
hikers.
Well, how about January 2nd? January, same thing for this upcoming January. Would you want it to be the 9th instead?
Either way is fine. Commission, what do you guys think? Second is fine? All right,
So
There we go.
January 2nd at what time?
the same, 7 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
If I may.
Sure.
The special meeting on January 23rd is the required meeting for Planning Commission to review the capital improvement plan. So that's why we set it separately, just because of the way it fits with the council meetings. So it would ideally be a short meeting, no applicants. It would just be to review, have the engineer go over the capital improvement plan for your approval.
May I ask why is it not just included in February 6th?
Because there's a deadline before that date, unfortunately.
That's a good reason. Okay.
We tried, but I don't know what date it is, but it didn't make it in time, so, thank you, sir.
Okay. It's 7 o'clock, right? Would it be better, if it's only going to be a short meeting, do we want to go earlier? Or is 7 o'clock better?
No.
7? Okay, all right. Just saying.
No change.
All
No
right.
change.
Did that answer your question?
I guess it did. All right. So everybody's got the dates and the submissions, so they know to mark their calendars appropriately. All right, Mr. Myers.
It's good to meet with you. My name is John Myers. Many of you may have seen me, but haven't had a chance to talk with me. I am the new city building official. Been here just about 5 months, and I'm glad to be here. I should be done by 9. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Now that I'm standing here, I got the 3-minute clock going probably, don't I? Listen, this is really just a highlight of some things, and I'm there you go. The concern I have is not negative, it's positive. And I'm biased from my perspective as the building official, but this is one of the most important commissions I can think of in the city. Every other commission will give you a reason why they're the best or the most important, but I see some real reasons why you guys become very, 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 very valuable to the city. And I'm going to give you 3 points, and then I'll be off the page. But being a preacher, those 3 points may take me a while. I'm just kidding. But we could all start with the fact that if you haven't figured out getting your MAP training education, we'll never quite be as smart as Ms. Smith in this field, but this would give you a fundamental of what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to do it, and how our performance should impact the present and the future of the city of East Point. And so it didn't seem fair for me to ask you to consider, if you've not been through a training class, to not have one myself. So I have certified and got myself certified in this field right before I got to the city so that I'd be ready to go looking at all the details. There's really only 3 subjects of why it's important for you as a commission to find yourself here as often as possible and miss as few as possible meetings from this day going forward. One is easy. You enforce all the existing rules and regulations. In 2019, they designed a master plan that you guys supported. Your team, whoever was here, approved. And that was really designed in so many different pieces of where we would move the city forward. And they designed it with a lot of overlays and some eliminations. They've expanded some capabilities in an MU1 where you could have multiple a density population in what seems to already be a built-out community. So they've set some footwork on the ground, and you guys show up every month challenging a client of why they want to be here and how well are they going to comply with our ordinances. Her job, Ms. Smith and mine, is to enforce everything that you comply with so that we go out into the street and when they go, we don't want to do, this is a sign that shouldn't have to be, it's been a grandfather, can we do it? We say no thank you. The ordinance and the zoning says this is how we're going in the next 5 years. The first thing you guys get to do, where nobody else in the city gets this, no other commission, is to settle down and go, what do we want the city to be operating under? Residential and commercial from the last 5 years. You get to control what we said. My simplest line on this is simple. If what we wrote in the last master plan wasn't gauged and enforced and mandated by you to keep us going in the right direction, it would be no reason to have one. If we changed it just because somebody talked us out of it, there'd be no reason to have it. When we just recently redid these zoning ordinances in last fall, utilizing your backgrounds, if we don't now control by keeping them, and we just change them to our own circumstances based on somebody's plead for us, it would be no reason to have one. So that's the first reason why we need you to be here, because you're the support behind planning and support behind building to knowing where we're going to go based on what we already have in place. The second rule is simple. It's that we get to evaluate what rules we made in the last 5 years up to this point, and how can we evaluate them for best practices about what this city needs going forward. So your job always becomes crucially, inviolably necessary so that we can evaluate, did we actually write rules that are actually measurable? Did we write rules that are actually enforceable? Do we write rules that actually improve the environment of lifestyle and life needs, not from what the history of the city used to be, but where are we going in the future? So if we don't get your help to evaluate, this is a rule that doesn't need to be here, we won't make those modifications. So you get to help us evaluate best practices. And let me put my last sentence on this subject. We do not have to measure against all the other cities. We have to measure about what we have in this city. We have 5 square miles, we have 34,000 people. We have a mixed use of building structures and mixed use of land use and designs. We measure against what we decided. We don't have to start by how many other cities do it this way. Maybe we should. We have to consider what's best for this city today and into the future. That's the task that you are invited as citizens of the city to invest in for our benefit in the future. We get to evaluate best practices. Because you see it every month, you have the largest opportunity to speak into it than any other commissions, because of the opportunity of watching the development or the lack of development take place by what we've written. And then the third point is simple. You get a chance to make a dream. You get to do more than just dream about the city. This year is going to begin the process. I can't tell you if we've opened the RFPs yet, but I do know that this is the cycle for the next 5-year master plan. And I'm a little bit of an old kind of guy with a new conviction. Because I'm so old, my conviction is I have to prepare for my children and my grandchildren. The question we're asking you as you go forward in this chair, looking at the 5-year master plan that is coming around the corner this 2025, is what will we leave for our children and our grandchildren? Will we leave a better community? Will we plan a better community? Will we vision a better community? Or will we be so busy just trying to take care of today's business, we don't have time to think about 2030? But if we do, could you imagine what we could set in motion? I can give you 4 cities. I'm only going to give you 2. But let me take a look back 18 years ago to the city of Detroit. It was regulated at that point in time, historically, as the worst large city in the country. Collapsing economically in default. It had the lowest population house value in the country of a large city. 18 years later, intentionally planned. Right now, for the first time, Ms. Smith will be able to confirm this, from the other end of the far west side of Mexican Town, all the way across to the island. This summer, this city has been rated as the #1 metropolitan park in the entire country. Not by accident. They rebuilt and redesigned Mexican Town. Then you know of Corktown. I've been involved in the people that were involved in building those and redesigning it and coming all the way across downtown, getting to the other side, and they designed it with an intent. 18 years they went from one of the worst corporate major cities in the entire country to the opposite side of the scale. We can do the same based on what we have here. Could you imagine if we take the standard of what they've already set in the last 5-year master plan and build on it? Thinking in our heads, what do we want the city to look like in 2040? The chances are I won't be here. Maybe I'll not be dead, but I just won't be in the city. But what will we be doing for the families that are here? We know then that the green issues in our state and our country are going to get bigger and faster. We know AI is coming much more aggressively. We know the market's changing. But how do we take care of our elderly without forgetting how to take care of the kids that are our grandchildren? The numbers are a little bit rough, but let me give you some of the ideas of dreaming in the future. We know that our city has a population of about 34,000. We know that over 40+% of them are under low mod income. That means 51,000. The last recording that I know, out of the whole population, residential, is 59,000 household income. We know that we have roughly about 30% of our population that is senior citizens that have already been retired for 10 or more years, meaning they're already on a fixed income, part of that low mod income, without the inflation that hit in the last 5 years. How do we take care of them? I just don't want you to be frightened by it. I want to encourage you. We may be one of the first cities in the state being creative enough by your skills and by your resources to put PACE and then put 42 senior living facilities on the ground where people that have a limited income and retirement could go live without losing everything they own, because we're going to put it in a new design facility that will reduce the building costs from $235 a square to $149. And now we might be able to put it, nowhere else yet has it been done. We don't have to wait for someone to see if it works. We could launch the new designs. We could be the first. We'll be one of the first 2 cities in the state of Michigan that will put one of the top food, gas facilities in a residential business district in this state. That's a starting point that no one else will be able to mark. They'll be able to watch our performance of that building going at the corner of 9 Mile and 94. They'll watch that performance. They're already watching the one that's in Romulus. Everybody I know is paying. My son just went there last night to pick somebody up to the gas at the airport, and he calls me because you won't believe it. I just paid for gas. I want to go, what are you doing? He goes, I just paid $2.54 for gas, a gallon, at the sheets that are out there. We're going to have a chance to be the first or second city to do that. We don't have to wait for someone else to design it. You are creative, you are visionary. We have the ability to take and write a vision for the city and then let them see what we want. We have a 5-year master plan coming, and we have a chance to begin to build it in such a way that as we scale it and we design it, no one's going to be able to turn away from it. And the next 5 years will give us to the next 10 years. So could you imagine what we set in the next year could establish what we will look like somewhere in 2040? That's why we need you guys to be here and engage. No other department, no other commission gets to write the future the way you guys will get to write the future. What we need is somebody to begin to start a vision of where we could be in 5, 10, and 15 years. I don't know any other commission that can do that, because everything comes through you, then it goes through council. We have a great opportunity. Don't waste it. Come get it, study it, create the learning curves that you need. But we have 3 things we can do. We can enforce the existing rules so that we have a pattern to go forward with. We can evaluate what rules really aren't valuable to our city's needs, best practices. And the biggest one for me, we can plan the design for the future for the next 15 years. When we leave our footprint on our time on that council, on that commission, no one in the next 15 years will be able to move it, because it'll change the way we build. Our history is wonderful, but what I leave for my grandchildren in this city to live in is more valuable than what I've experienced. And that's why I'm inviting you to do everything you can to take all the commissioners and keep them on board for the next 1.5 years, 2 years, because we have a great chance to change the world. Not starting at the state, starting in this 5 square miles. Please consider how important your job will be and what a privilege it'll be to design a new city for 2040, right where you sit today. Don't do today for today, do today for tomorrow. Thank you.
Reverend John.
I know, it was like a graduation speech or something.
Thank you, Mr. Myers.
So eloquent.
All right, moving on to the second hearing of the public. Ms. Holman. Well, I'm just. We just did that.
Yes, it was.
That was the discussion.
It was a,
It wasn't for us.
it was a
Yeah.
backdoor.
He was training us.
Okay.
And you,
All right.
see, and you didn't even catch it. You were so enthralled by it.
It's engaged.
All right. Second hearing of the public. Does anybody wish to be heard? Ms. Holman? You got anything to say? All right, we're closing the second hearing of the public. Okay, the second hearing of the public is closed. I'm not doing my Sheldon Cooper tonight. Moving on to commissioner comments. Ms. Holman.
She is. Mr. Chair, if I may, and Commissioner members, there is such a distinct change here in City Hall. Over the past couple of years, we had bumps and starts and things like that, but I want you to know, because you're not behind the scenes, that Mr. Myers and Ms. Smith have an incredible working relationship, and that not just them and being creative, but the communication and collaboration with all the other departments is unprecedented. Whether it's police for something, or whether it's animal control, or whether it's code enforcement through police. But the team efforts have been unbelievable to work to make all these neighborhoods better, safer, and more valuable for all the property owners. So, and like Mr. Myers said, we're going to have fun moving forward with this master plan prep.
Mr. Myers?
Between Brigitte and I, we have one more subject we want to make sure we're aware of, and that is the absentee versus excused issues with your commission. I don't know if there's really any written policy. Attorney, you might be able to give us some clarification on that. But as we see the surprise and late minutes, do we make those as excuses or and excused absences, or are they not? And therefore, part of it is keeping everyone accountable to coming and giving us a concern. From our side of the coin, the concern is if it gets too tight, we wake up one night and we get here and we find out we don't have a quorum. And everybody's been prepared. The cost of the meeting, the newspaper articles have gone out, and we want to make sure that we can evaluate our performance, because this team and this commission is going to be important. So I'd like to take just a minute and discuss any policies that this commission does already have about excused and unexcused absences. Anybody?
Mr. Chair, I believe it's addressed in the commission's bylaws. I haven't looked at the bylaws in a while, so I don't have them in front of me, but I believe it is addressed in the bylaws. But with regard to excused versus unexcused, I don't know if it's that specific again, but attendance is addressed in the commission's bylaws. So that would be the area that would be addressed.
All right, because
Well, I was just gonna point out too that we typically discuss the bylaws every year at the beginning of the year. So something to think about as we enter the new year is, again, we recognize this is a volunteer position. And we greatly appreciate your participation and time, but we also want to make sure we're following through our duty to not only the city, but the applicants as well, and just make sure we're running efficiently. So maybe it is worth having a conversation again in the beginning of the year before we adopt the bylaws, if we give special consideration to not only what we consider as excused and unexcused, but setting further guidelines around that. You know,
So let's put that on the agenda for January.
sounds good.
Good. That means every one of you would want to read those bylaws so you're familiar with them. And we'll make sure you have a copy to them and the most recent ones, and then we can address that.
Okay. Well, besides me skipping over that, as Mr. Broll has pointed out, do you have any other comment?
I don't. I'm just grateful and thankful to be a part of the city. I'm a visionary, and I'm excited about being a part. I've been impressed with how you've handled your cases that I've been involved in. You've asked genuine questions that can be piercing but yet transforming. I've seen you perform hot issues with sheets, and you're willing to give modifications and yet not change the principle of our purpose, and that was impressive. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
Yes, I always like to thank you. I think, again, you guys do great work, and I really appreciate your thoroughness. And we have a new commissioner, Commissioner Sasek. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to introduce myself before the meeting, but I'm looking forward to being able to work with you, and we're excited to have you on our commission. And one thing I would like to have more of a discussion on at next meeting, and maybe even revisit some tidbits of our zoning ordinance, is around we can discuss event space and how we define that, but we also have some other uses in our ordinance, which in practice have been leading to certain misuses and negative impacts on surrounding properties. Specifically experiential retail and business incubator spaces. So I would like to have a conversation, maybe next month we just start with the discussion, but we can start to look at some other language that community use to set more clear parameters around how spaces can be used, and then again talk about ways that we're still accommodating small businesses and entrepreneurs and trying to be flexible enough for there to be creative uses and collaborative spaces, while also still avoiding nuisances and making sure that we're being clear to applicants on where they are able to have a event hall and the process that they have to go through. You know, like the applicant here said tonight, to make sure we are being consistent and fair. And again, we're being considerate to the fabric of our community and the surrounding impacts that certain uses may have. So I think we can at least start with the discussion next month and go from there.
Terms and definitions.
Agreed.
Yes.
Mr. Albright?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one comment. Welcome, Commissioner Sasek. I believe that you are a lifelong resident of the city of East Point.
Yes.
And so I'm sure you'll bring a wonderful perspective and balance to this commission with any historical information that you have. And I know that you've been very active with other boards and commissions as well. So again, welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Stokes?
Good to see you all, and welcome aboard, Gary.
Thank you, Alex.
Busha?
Good evening. No, I have no comments. Welcome, Gary.
Mr. Sasek?
Thank you, everybody. I am truly looking forward to working with all of you. Some of you I've known for a while, others were just meeting, but again, I really think that we can be a vital part of this city. And even though it's early, I'm going to take this opportunity to wish everybody a very safe and happy Thanksgiving with family and friends, because it'll be here before we realize it. That's all I have, Chairman.
Mr. Broll?
I just have a couple comments. First of all, propitious, that was quite the use of a word that I don't know that I've ever heard used in a sentence. 2 points for you.
He's hanging around Rob Baker.
Word of the day.
Word of the day.
Did
There
I
we
use
go. I liked
propitious?
it. You didn't even know. Okay. Anyways, we don't need to focus on that. Today's, the topic in front of us today was a win for the city in that we have a building that was empty for 5 years being used. And what I really like about it is the use of that building will use the municipal lot behind the building. So what a win, you know, in terms of the use of the building and that parking lot. So really happy, you know, about that use. Mr. Meyer, that was a great speech. I don't know, was it a speech? It felt like a speech. It was a great speech, and I'm a bullet point guy. So what I would ask of the person who records the minutes, there were 3 bullet points, and I would love to see those in the minutes next week. The first bullet point is enforcement of existing, I don't know what the title of the speech was, but, you know, building the best city. Number 1, enforcement of existing ordinances. Number 2, evaluate for best use and use best practices. And the third point was designed for the future. And I thought those were 3 great points, and I'm a bullet point guy, so I hope those are in the meeting minutes next week. And Mr. Sasek, welcome to the board, the commission. Thank you.
I just received a text message for Commissioner Moody. She is unwell, and her words, quote, were, she's been watching the meeting from her sick bed or sick couch. I'm watching, I love the passion. So, Mr. Myers, you touched Commissioner Moody, but she did want to send her regards. She did work at voting, and it kind of kicked her butt. So, thank you for joining the fun. And I appreciate everything that you do in the city. So we just came out of a horrific election that I'm just happy it's over. And all I'm going to say is don't let anger live in your mind, because the only byproduct is your sanity. So we just have to be happy find happiness wherever you can. I find it with my cat. Ms. Ulinski finds it with her grandchild. And, by the way, doesn't she look remarkably well for just having her 39th birthday? So happy belated birthday. And with that, I just want to thank Mr. Myers for his words and his passion. So we're done.
I'd like to say ironically, it's on All Saints Day.
At least it's not the Day of the Dead.
Oh, my God.
At least it's not the Day of the Dead. Can I get a motion to close the meeting, please?
Motion.
Support.
We have motion and support. Secretary, please call the roll.
Ms. Julinski, yes. Mr. Broll?
Yes.
Mr. Stokes?
Yes.
Mr. Sasek?
Yes.
Chairman DeHaan?
Yes.